Perfect. So, so you gave an introduction, but really this work on transformational leadership is Jennifer's work and her PhD and postdoc at Queen's that really have initiated this and have really made this work available to coaches for consumption and for help for the work with different organizations and sport organization. So what I'd like to do here is just start with a couple of slides, and then Jen will take over and explain a little bit the background of how transformational leadership became kind of this idea of transformational coaching. But really where I would like to start is with maybe kind of 10 to 15 years of work that we've done on looking at observing coaches and observing the interactions between coaches and athletes in youth sport. And really what this work has implied is that we've been looking at going to the field, the arena, the gymnasium with cameras and put a microphone on the coach and have a big parabolic microphone to get the interactions between coaches and athletes, and really recording games and practices and trying to understand what's going on during games and practices in terms of interactions. And some of the things that came out of this is that professional knowledge and behaviors of coaches is the foundation, and it's an important, very important aspect of coaching, but is insufficient for optimal personal development through sport. And really what came out of these studies, of these observational studies, and a lot of these studies were done over a season, so kind of semi-longitudinal in terms of time frame. But what we found is that the interpersonal and intrapersonal knowledge and behaviors of coaching were the additional ingredients that really differentiate between a very effective coach and a less effective coach. So basically what we found is that it's not really what coaches do, the content of what they do in terms of how they design a drill or how they design a practice, but it's more about the how. It's about the communication and how they interact with their athletes in coaching. And one of the study here, I think that kind of really showed this is, you know, like we would observe coaches and we would look at the best, like a group of the very effective one and the less effective one. And really it's the interaction in terms of how coaches talk to their athletes during a practice that makes the difference between a highly effective and a less effective coach. And based on this, and this is where Jen really came in terms of her doctorate work, is we try to say, okay, so well, if it's the communication, the interpersonal aspect of coaching, that is a very important aspect. And we found that that has not been really conceptualized in the coaching research. And where we went, you know, we could have found other models, but we looked at leadership as a way of conceptualizing interpersonal behaviors in coaching. And I think some of the best work that we found is the full range leadership model. And, you know, you can look at coaching or you can look at leadership as leader being at one end of the continuum, being really engaged with their athletes and also being effective or ineffective. So we're engaged or not engaged to effective or ineffective. And if you look at coaches or leaders that are engaged and ineffective, the research, we could describe this style as a toxic kind of leadership, toxic style of leadership. And then if you go to the other end where coaches or leaders are not engaged and ineffective, that's the laissez-faire leadership style. So where coaches that show no really interest in, and you know, they will check their Facebook or they will check their email during a practice. And then in all these studies, one style that we found that was very used by a lot of coaches is this neutral type of leadership, where it's right in the middle, where we don't really know if it's very effective or it's not the most effective style. It could be ineffective. Coaches are engaged or not, but coaches are basically giving instruction without any kind of emotion, without any kind of, they're not very enthusiastic in how they present the information. So you go here, you do that, and so basically just organizing the setting without much emotion and enthusiasm in doing that. Then there's this transactional style of leadership that I think people are familiar with where leaders use a lot of rewards and punishment. And I think that's done quite a bit in coaching. And as you can see it here, is just sitting on this idea of this being effective or less effective. So the issues with transactional leadership is that in the long term, it will have a very negative influence on motivation. And then finally, there's the idea of transformational leadership, where coaches are engaged, leaders are engaged, and has been shown through the literature in many fields of study, military, education, medicine, sport, that it's a very effective style to influence athletes' engagement and to influence athletes' development in sport and follower development in sport. So this is, again, I just wanted to present those two slides to really situate the whole idea of transformational leadership in coaching as a way to understand interpersonal behaviors. And I think with the previous slide, I demonstrated that interpersonal behaviors is a key factor in coaching that has not really been conceptualized before this work.